Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Christine. I like to read dark and disturbing things. Today, we're going to talk about everything that I read in the month of May. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at my reading journal where I write down everything that I read and kind of have some of my stats here. So in the month of May, I read a total of 12 books. When I say read, I'm counting my DNFs. I don't know, do you count those? I guess they won't count on my Goodreads, but I got through them in some way or shape or form and I'm done with them. Out of those 12, 7 books were books that I owned before the start of the year. I've been keeping track of reading what I own to try to keep myself accountable for checking off some of the backlog that I've got going on here. Two of the books I read were ARCs, and I had 2 DNFs. Whenever I do reading wrap-ups, I break it up. I do a mid-month and I do an end of the month, just so I'm not talking about 12 books. I can't remember all that, and no one wants to hear me yammer for that long. So if you'd like to check out what I read in the first half of May, I'm gonna link that down below. My favorite read from that month, I actually had 3 really solid 4-star reads. I had The Lamb, I had Blood on Her Tongue, and I had Where I End, all solid 4-star reads. But I think my favorite would have to be Blood on Her Tongue by Johanna van Veen. Want to hear me yap about that? Again, the link is down below. So in the second half, I DNF'd 2 books. I had 1 ARC and I had 6 books total. Yes, okay. The very first book I read was The Honey Witch by Sydney Shields. I am absolutely in love with this book, the way that it looks. It's gorgeous. It came from, it looks like last year I got this from a Cottagecore Fairy Loot box. Did I? I think I bought it off of somebody because I was in love with the look of it and I like witchy stuff. This book, my friends, was a DNF. I made it to 52%. And seriously, nothing was happening. We have this woman, she finds out that she is a witch. She goes to live with her grandmother, who is also a witch, and she makes a lot of things for her little town. Like they live in like kind of a secluded area, and the grandma's like, you know, like a little pharmacy making things to help people out. The grandma passes away, and now it is up to the granddaughter to take over this witchy pharmacy. She ends up meeting another woman who you know is going to be her love interest because she is so annoying. She is such an annoying character. She's super bitchy to our main character. Do I remember any of their names? No. And you just know that it's going to be like supposed to be like enemies to lovers, but not really. They were never really enemies. One's just annoying. And you could also tell where it's gonna go. Also, being a honey witch in this book is you have like a special connection to bees and the different honeys that they make. And you really have to suspend your belief. And I don't just mean the witch stuff, but like, oh, there's opposites, you know, there's fire and water. They're opposite elements. And then your opposite of honey is, of course, ash. So apparently there's ash witches, and I think we all know who's probably going to end up being an ash witch. And I'm sorry if that's a spoiler. I didn't read it. I'm just assuming. 52%, nothing was happening. I was so bored. I guess if you like cozy stuff that doesn't go anywhere, then you might like this book. If you ended up liking this book, let me know why you liked it. I was just super bored. And I went into it thinking it was going to be like a cozy witch thing, but it was still just too cozy. So DNF, and sadly I'm going to have to unhaul that gorgeous, gorgeous copy. The next book I read was an ARC that was sent to me by the author. So thank you very much to them. I felt a little guilty when they actually mailed this to me and it came from the UK. Like a lot of times, like people will just send you something through Amazon or something. But no, they took the time to mail it to me, and that is Haunted Letters from Elspeth by R.D. Salmon. And I read this one for Horror Mayhem. This is more of just like a gothic story, but it's a shorty. It's under 200 pages. And This book is about a lawyer that is going to, I think, his aunt's house. Yes, he's clearing out his aunt's house, going through all the paperwork as these stories tend to do. So it very much starts off with the same vibes as The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. This one is, he's going through his aunt's stuff and he finds these, like a stack of letters, like letters that has been sent to his aunt by a woman named Elspeth, or short, she goes by Ellie. And she's telling this whole story about how she kind of moved into this secluded home of her uncle who no longer could take care of this house. I think it's on an island, or it's very secluded. And she's just kind of getting used to all of the living in this secluded countryside, the different types of people she meets, and things start kind of happening in the house. She's writing a series of letters to her friend and kind of just telling her about life, like how things are going. She kind of starts a relationship with somebody. She's kind of annoyed by other people that live in the town and all of that stuff. But then within the letters, she starts to experience hearing things in the house and maybe seeing things in the house. You start to kind of wonder if she's in a haunted situation, hence the name Haunted. I will say that the writing was very easy to follow. I think this takes place in the 70s, though it seemed like it took place, like the language, I don't know if it's just because it's British, but the language seemed like it was from definitely longer ago than it actually was. Let me see if it has, yeah, I mean, these letters were being written in 1978. So we're talking less than 50 years ago. At least here, people didn't speak that way. I don't know about in England, but very proper and very, even just the act of writing these long letters seems very old school to me, very old fashioned. So that's what kind of gives it the Gothic vibes. I will say that there was a lot of humor injected into these letters, which was nice. Otherwise it would have probably been kind of boring to just read someone else's letters after a while, especially since you don't get to see the back and forth. These are just one-way letters. The humor that she puts in there, you were very much invested in the main character. And I do think that maybe there was a little bit of pacing issues, and which I feel that way about Gothic stories in general. Sometimes they're a little too slow for me. And then when things happen, it's just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I waited and waited for this to happen. And then things kind of happen quickly. And that's how I felt about this one. A little too quick at the end. It definitely leaves the reader wondering what exactly is going on. I felt like it could have maybe been wrapped up a little bit nicer at the end. I give it a solid 3.5 stars, which for me means I enjoyed it. It's not like a super favorite of mine, but I didn't dislike it either. It was okay for me. So that was Haunted, Letters from Elspeth by R.D. Salmon. The next book I read was the Fright Club book club pick for May. So I'm not going to go into great detail because we're going to be discussing this live over on Cliff's channel, Cliff's Dark Gems. I will link him down below, as well as our Discord for the Fright Club. I thought this was a really fun atmosphere surrounding the book. We read My Life as a White Trash Zombie by Diana Rowland, and we got a lot more people participating than what was in our little group because Kat from Kat's Novel Adventures, she was doing her zombie-thon for May, as she always does, and that's why we picked a zombie book. And a lot of people from that were reading this book as well. So I was able to kind of see how people were feeling about it. It seemed like a lot of people really enjoyed this one. It is basically a very light zombie book, I will say. We have our main character who finds out that she is a zombie, like kind of slowly over time. She wakes up in the hospital one day. She was told she had an overdose, and she starts to notice that things are not quite right with her body, and things are just kind of weird. She ends up getting a job offered to her to work in a coroner's office. She's the person that goes to pick up corpses at crime scenes or just death scenes, I guess, and brings them back and help. She's like an assistant to the coroner, which gives her the opportunity to have access to brains. I'm not going to give you my rating, but this is a whole series, and I'm just going to say that I saw someone on Pango selling books 2 through 6. I don't even know how high it goes, but they were selling them for a pretty good price, and I had to pick them up because I would continue this little zombie adventure. It's about zombies, but it's not about like a zombie takeover. It's just more like a person's day-to-day life. We're in the life of this person who's really struggling to kind of have a second chance at life and turn her shit around and do things right, break that cycle. And she finds out she's a zombie. Check out Cliff's channel on Sunday. That is this coming Sunday, the 8th, June 8th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and we will have a little live discussion. I will try to remember to go back and link our discussion below in case you want to watch it back. The next book I read or tried to read was a DNF, and that was Brainwyrms by Alison Rumfitt. The cover, stunning, stunning cover. You know that you're going to get some gross stuff going into this, right? You see the worms coming out of the mouth, and you know that this is probably not for the faint of heart, and it definitely is not. I got this one on audio from my library, and I'm just driving to work in the morning, and I'm like, I'll start listening to this. Maybe not the best idea. I'm not sure if it's the circumstances of listening to it and kind of listening to it to and from work. It's not exactly light listening. Maybe if I read this with my eyeballs, I would feel differently, but it was just, obviously this is extreme horror and it is very over the top. So I would definitely read any and all trigger warnings. I didn't get very far into knowing what the main story was going to be, but we start off with a trans woman who is in like a fetish club, and she meets this other person, and they immediately get to know each other in the bathroom. And it kind of snowballs from there, where it's like this sexual obsession of between these two people. And I know that there was like another storyline going with our main character working I think she was working in like a facility that helps people transition from one gender to the next. And that building gets attacked, it gets bombed, and you don't really get a whole lot of that story, or maybe you do further on. I felt like everything was so like centralized to this sexual obsession. I don't want to kink shame, but I kind of want to kink shame. It just wasn't for me. I wanted more of the other story, and I think based on a lot of my friends really liking this book and giving it like 4 or 5 stars, that it eventually gets there. I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't even really get to the parasite part, the worms. I was honestly just a little bit bored hearing someone constantly think about how they're going to get off doing whatever things, being violent, sexually abusive, things that I find sexually abusive. And it seemed like possibly that's where it was going, and it just wasn't my thing. I apologize if I'm getting the wrong impression of this book, but I felt like we had characters who were mentally suffering and going through some sort of abuse or history of abuse, and then trying to recover from that by putting themselves in these really odd sexual situations that kind of rely on being like sexually degraded. I was really uncomfortable with it. It's not my thing. I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's not my thing. I DNF'd this at 35%, but I know a lot of people really liked it, so that one's up to you, but please read all the trigger warnings. Next, I read a book that it was one of my like most anticipated books when I was researching all the books that were coming out in 2025 and I was making my quarterly videos. This one really stuck out to me, so I was really excited to read At the Bottom of the Garden by Camilla Bruce. This was my first time reading this author, and it's about 2 children who lose their parents in a mountain climbing accident, and they are suddenly orphaned, and the only relative they have left is their aunt, who has had nothing to do with them ever, like never sends them Christmas cards, birthday cards, never sees them. And quite frankly, she is not a person who wants to be a mother. She does not have that maternal instinct. The children come to live with her, and the children have like these abilities ever since their parents went missing, where one can kind of see colors of different people to kind of get the vibe of what they're emotionally going through, whether they're angry or happy or lying, that kind of thing. And the other one can see ghosts, and she's seeing some ghosts in Auntie's house. Turns out Auntie had something to do with these ghosts being there. I thought this was going to be way more gothic, way more dark than it was. It really just read like it was supposed to be humorous. It's kind of like horror light, where we're not taking these ghosts too seriously. What's her name? Aunt Clara, the killer, is, you know, she's not too scared by these things. She's more annoyed by these ghosts. She's annoyed by the children, and she starts trying to use the children to make money off of their abilities. Oh, she's in love with diamonds, darling. Diamonds. Everything's about diamonds. She wants to have a diamond shop. She really just wants to take these kids in so she can get their money to buy more diamonds. And the whole thing, I saw someone, someone that reviewed this said that she was like over the top a caricature, and she seemed kind of like Cruella de Vil trying to collect puppies. And exactly, that is exactly the vibe. She gives Cruella de Vil, but not in a good way, and just like a very cheesy way. So you couldn't really take this story seriously. I feel like this would be more of, maybe if you like horror, cozy horror, horror light, Darcy Coates. Although I will say Darcy Coates can write a very scary scene. None of this was scary. I was super disappointed by this. I would give it 3 stars, maybe 2.5. Yeah, I looked forward to this one, and the way that it reads on the back of what this, like how this book should read, is not how it is at all. If you're into this kind of theme, just read Series of Unfortunate Events. It's done much better. Last but not least, I read, finally, Hollow Kingdom by Kira Jane Buxton. This one's been on my shelf for a few years, and every time Zombie-thon comes around, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna read that, and then I don't. I'm not going to talk too much about this one though, because my friend and I have decided to give each other 5 books to read over the summer, and in August we're gonna vlog as we read, and in August we'll post the videos on our channels. And this was one of the books that she picked for me, which is kind of funny because it was on my TBR, and she didn't know it was going to be on my TBR, and I didn't know she was going to pick it for me, and it just kind of worked out. So I was like, okay, I have to read this one now. So I'm not going to tell you my thoughts on the book, but I will tell you it is a book in like a zombie apocalypse, and we are in the mind of ST, short for shit turd, and he's a crow, and he's just trying to navigate this crazy zombie apocalypse with his brother. Is that what you would call him? The other pet that he lived with, which was a bloodhound named Dennis. And the two of them are just trying to survive and find their way around this crazy world. And it takes place in Seattle. You can see the Seattle skyline there. And yeah, I have vlogged myself reading this, and I'm just going to take my time and squeeze in those other 4 books here and there throughout the summer. And at the end, I will post that video so you could see my full thoughts there. All right, so that was everything I read in the month of May. I will say the first half of May was definitely a much better reading month for me. I had a lot of bangers in the first half with The Lamb, Blood on Her Tongue, Where I End, Crypt of the Moon Spider, like all 4-star reads for me. I really enjoyed them. Then it just kind of went downhill from there. I hope you guys all had fun participating in Zombie-thon if you did that. And if you read my Life is a White Trash Zombie, I hope to see you on Sunday during the live show. You guys can chat in the chat and we will interact with you guys. Let me know down below what your favorite read of May was. I have to stick with Blood on Her Tongue by Johanna Van Veen. I feel like I ended that month in a bit of a slump, so hopefully I can come out of that slump. I'm DNF'ing stuff this year, you guys. I'm not messing around. I ain't got time for that. I love to see your comments down below. If you want to say hi but you don't have much to say, leave me an emoji of a zombie for Zombie-thon. Thank you to Kat from Kat's Novel Adventures for joining us with the Fright Club and reading My Life is a White Trash Zombie. I'm not sure that I would have ever read that if it wasn't for that readathon and everyone voting for that. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching, and stay spooky.